What's up, y'all? Let's talk dirt. Today we're going to be talking about regenerative, what that word means, organic, what happened to that word, a little bit about labeling, but this isn't going to be just about food and agriculture. We're also going to be talking about what a regenerative business would be, a regenerative society, and breaking down the difference between organic, natural, regenerative, what those words really mean. All right, so let's get into it. So first of all, I know a lot of people find it hard to keep up with the nuance with all the different words that are constantly being thrown at us in a barrage of different things. Oh, this is free range. Oh, wait, no, free range doesn't mean anything. It needs to be pasture raised. Oh, wait, that doesn't mean anything. Oh, this is certified organic. And then at a certain point, they're like, well, you can put a little bit of not organic stuff as long as it's like just a tiny fraction. And next thing you know, stuff that was certified organic was like frozen foods and all sorts of other stuff that wouldn't have technically passed as natural or organic food in the past. A lot of that happened in the 90s and we're still dealing with the fallout from it. So, is organic food natural? Is it regenerative? Not necessarily. And so we're going to break down exactly what's the difference between regenerative. What makes something regenerative? And I think the most important thing here to remember is the word closed loop. Okay? So if you're getting your inputs from somewhere else to produce something, and then sending it off, that's not closed loop. Closed loop is creating and using everything that you have accessible to you. And I know not everything will always be able to be fully 100% regenerative in nature. Some businesses, it just can't be like that. But you can follow a model that's more regenerative, that will be more able to supply means for more people and more stable economies as well, rather than extractive and import-export economies that are based on less steady supply chains. So there's going to be some benefits not only to your life if your society is more regenerative, but also to the resilience of that society. So closed loop, something that's important to focus on in regenerative anything. So when we're talking about farming, we might be looking at what mulch do I have available on my property that I can use instead of buying some mulch and bringing it on to the property. Let's say you bought a bag of wood chips and then you applied them to your garden. That's organic. There you go. You're organic. You're using organic, natural inputs. Some could say, oh yeah, that's natural too. But you can do a lot of things that are a little bit quasi-natural with organic as well, and a lot of the stuff that you wouldn't consider regenerative would be buying a pre-made product. So when you're buying a product that's like in a bottle already, there's the waste of that bottle. There's the waste of the manufacturing to make that bottle. There's the waste of the shipping to get that bottle to you. So if you're not making your compost on your property, that's not regenerative. If you're not creating your mulch on your property, that's not regenerative. Let's take a look at an example of something that's really close to being regenerative, and maybe you could give them like a green card pass for this one. Green card. I guess a green pass maybe would be a better way of putting that. So let's say you had a company that was trimming trees, like a lot of the time the electrical companies will trim trees around the power lines. And you talk to one of the guys driving the trucks and you're like, hey, if you ever want to dump some of your wood chips on my property, you can just dump them here instead of taking them to the dump. And it's faster and it's cheaper for them. So a lot of times people will take you up on that. Now you could say, oh, I'm being regenerative using these wood chips because I didn't go out of my way. I didn't use any gasoline. They just appeared here. And that's like, I'll give someone a pass. That's being very resourceful and upcycling, although there was still the gasoline that brought those wood chips to you. So there's just one little link in that chain that makes it non-regenerative, but it's so close. So this is the world that I would like to be moving towards. Not one that's 100% regenerative all the time, but just one that takes into consideration how certain things can be done without creating as much waste, without creating as much excess of moving things all around that don't need to be moved around. All right, so we got closed loop. You got the difference between regenerative and organic. Now, another thing that's really focused on in regenerative is inputs. Inputs and outputs. A lot of the times when people are doing conventional farming, I don't think that's a good word for it because it's very modern. You should call it modern farming, not conventional, because that insinuates that it's an older thing. Anyway, getting off topic. So in regenerative agriculture, you're focusing on what the cost of the input is and what the output is. In conventional, you're just like, how much can I output at whatever the cost? So you could be costing yourself money You could be costing the soil by breaking it down and degrading it so the next generation can't grow things as well. And these are the costs that are baked into getting this high output where you're just only focused on output. Now, that isn't to say that you can't get a high output doing regenerative, because you can. It's just that you want to take into consideration how to balance the inputs and outputs. That's what a regenerative system is, because if it's not actually improving, it's not regenerating. If it's not staying at least as fertile, as good as it is, it's not regenerating. So I think that we can apply this philosophy to not just farming, but to our society and to other business models as well. And let me break that down for you a little bit so that you can understand. And again, one more time, I'm not saying every farm has to be 100% regenerative. I just think that people that are farming should be focused on, how can I make this more regenerative? How can I serve the community that's closest to me more, instead of things going a further distance? How can I use local inputs like chips from my neighbor, or that the power company, like I said, instead of buying bags at the box store that were imported from far away? That's the regenerative ideal. Trying to keep things where you can understand there's not a million links in the chain for how a product got to you before you start using it. So apply that to other business models, and you can see, like, all right, let's say you have a lumber mill. You wouldn't want the lumber mill to be super far away from where the trees are, because that wouldn't really make sense, because then you have to ship the trees all the way to the lumber mill. So by doing things like that, businesses inherently build in these models because it's financially responsible sometimes. But we can get carried away not continuing to build that into the infrastructure of businesses and our society. So another example of a way that you could do your business regeneratively is, like, we make a lot of our clothes in Asia because the labor is cheap, but we grow a lot of cotton here in the United States. So if we made clothes here in the United States, although it would be more expensive, it would be way more regenerative. Another great example of things not being regenerative would be, I know there's many companies that will fish all over the world, but they only process in certain parts of the world. So you could catch fish over here, but your processing center's over there. So then you ship the fish all the way back over to the processing center. Then you might be selling them close to where you caught them. So it's like, oh, look, this fish was caught close to me, but it was shipped halfway around the world to get processed into a can and be sold to you as sardines here. So we have to take into consideration that although sometimes you will naturally get a regenerative model, like the lumber mills being close to the trees, sometimes when capitalism gets a little bit too crazy, the regenerative model gets lost and things are being shipped all over the place for no reason. And we're really just creating a net loss of energy. And that's one of the goals of regenerative, is building things up so that they continue to be more fertile, and then you can get those big yields without putting those high inputs in. A great example of a regenerative mindset would be kind of the way Masanobu Fukuoka explained different varieties of chickens. So you might have one variety that's larger and lays more eggs per day, but also eats more feed and is harder to take care of and more prone to diseases. This other smaller bantam chicken, in this case, might make less eggs per day and smaller eggs. However, they require much less maintenance. So the input is so much less that you're actually getting more output for the amount of input that you're putting in. So just trying to apply that, it's like less is more, work smarter, not harder. These are all the kind of things, Zen, kind of just trying to chill, Wu Wei, force nothing. This is all up to the mindset of regenerative. All right, so those are different ways that we can have more regenerative businesses, and I really hope that all these big business gurus can think about actually not greenwashing themselves and buying climate credits, but actually making business models that are regenerative, not like data mining and mining bitcoins and data centers and all the cloud computing and all the stuff they're doing. That's like, wow, we're burning a lot of resources to do this, but like, for what? Like, what are we are communicating in different ways now, I guess, as I'm talking to you on the internet. Anyway, so as societies, hopefully we can start implementing more regenerative things. Like that would be like having local community events going on. It'd be like having third places, however you want to put it, so that people can gather outside of their homes and actually connect with other people. That would be a more regenerative society versus one that's always online and only communicating to each other at a distance and through all of this technology that pays all these corporations that are always taking advantage of us. So something to consider is a regenerative society would be focused on lifting everybody up because you want the fertility to be spread all around. It's not about like, oh, only give those good ones and those. It's like, no, every plant could be useful in a regenerative garden. And so again, we have to consider that. You can't just say this is regenerative and that's not regenerative. Like you have to use clover, or you have to use yarrow, or you have to use this or that. It's not like that. Depending on where you are, you're going to have to do what your environment allows you to do there. So it might not be possible for you to grow the same cover crops or the same food that other people are growing in different environments, in different growing zones. But that's all right, because you can still find something that's like wood chips, that's like grass clippings, that's like manure that you can use to add fertility to your garden. And you can do the same thing, I feel, to add fertility or lushness or whatever, however you want to put it, to your society and to your businesses. So hopefully this has helped a lot of people understand the difference between regenerative and just normal organic, and how regenerative is a lot of a philosophy and not just a growing style. And be aware, a lot of people are starting to take advantage and use this word regenerative that a lot of us in the community have known about for a long time now, to start greenwashing, which is when they pretend that they're being more ethical with the environment than they actually are, via buying climate credits or saying regeneratively sourced on their packaging. And you're going to start to see it now. You can't always believe what labels are telling you. I mean, yeah, I could talk all sorts of bad stuff about the organic certification, the USDA organic anyway, but at the very least, it's telling you your food is not GMO. That's one good thing about it. So you just have to be aware of what labels are actually saying and try to just know your farmer or grow your own food. And that is the best way for you to get access to more regeneratively grown food. So one more thing about businesses is we really got to stop with all this packaging that is not regenerative, or at least not recyclable, because it's just out of control. So this is one other way we really need to build this in, where things just don't become trash. We're the only creature that creates trash on Earth. I mean, sure, a lot of creatures don't like to live in their own filth, but that gets recycled by the environment. We're the only creature that makes these landfills. So we really need to figure out what we're doing here so that we can not continue to make things worse for the next generation, if that's not too doomer for you all. Anyway, I think I'll end it there before I start yapping about too much nonsense. But yes, regenerative is the way of the future for growing. It is the way of the past for growing. And I think we need to educate more people about it and make sure that it doesn't get lost in the mix or turn into another hype word that people don't even believe anymore, like organic. All right, that's all. Peace.